She holds an MSc and a PhD. Okay, let's try again. I'll keep the red light in mind. So she... Yeah. Good. Let's continue. Batteries are flat for most of us, so we will forgive the microphone. Her professional experience covers economic exploration and environmental geology and management. She's an honorary life member of the Geological Society of Namibia, an honorary fellow of the Geological Society of London. Okay. And is registered with the Namibian Geoscience Council and the South African Council for Natural Science Professionals. Dr. Schneider serves on a number of working groups of the World Nuclear Association and the International Atomic Energy Agency, on the Scientific Committee of UNESCO's International Geoscience Program, on Namibia's Geoscience Council, on UNESCO's Global Geoparks Council, on the Commission for the Implementation of the World Heritage Convention in Namibia, and as trustee of the Namibian Institute of Mining and Technology. She played a leading role in the strategic environmental assessment of the Namibian uranium province. And if I read all this, I wonder if she ever has time to spend a day at her desk and work. Welcome, Dr. Gabi Schneider. I hand the microphone to you.
Thank you so much, Benita. And yeah, I can assure you I have time to sit on my desk. But I agree, it's a mouthful. My apologies. Yeah, first of all, let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to talk to you about uranium and its importance for the Namibian economy. Let me also say before I start, I'm fully aware of the fact that uranium and nuclear energy is a subject that is, especially in the German community, quite often discussed with quite an emotional background. So let me assure you, this is not going to be an advertising stunt for nuclear energy. This is rather an attempt to give you some information and background to an important Namibian resource. Namibia is the third largest producer of uranium in the world, and we as Namibian citizens, I think, should know a little bit about it. Unfortunately, this beamer is very, very strong. My slides are usually not that light, but Benita has already made a joke. She said the yellow is simply the uranium glowing. Okay, now the microphone works, but this thing, oh yeah, it does. Right, let me just quickly allow me to take you back into the chemistry class at school. My apologies to those of you who know all of this, but I thought to set the scene, perhaps I must tell you a few things. Uranium is the heaviest naturally occurring element. It was discovered way back in 1789 by a German scientist. Very important for us, it has three naturally occurring isotopes. That's uranium-238, uranium-235, and uranium-234. And I will come back to it later, why that is important. Their composition in terms of protons, electrons, and neutrons is also given here. And what makes uranium interesting for those people who want to produce energy from it is that large atomic nuclei may be unstable. And as they disintegrate, they emit particles and electromagnetic waves. This is also what we refer to as nuclear radiation. Now, what do we do with uranium? First of all, we use it as a nuclear fuel in nuclear reactors. But smaller nuclear reactors are also used to power nuclear submarines and also aircraft carriers. We have research reactors, very important for the production of medical isotopes. And of course, I also have to mention it, we obviously also use it in nuclear weapons, or at least those countries who do that. The approximate annual production in the world is 60,000 tons of uranium oxide, and Namibia has a share of 8,200 tons, or had last year 8,200 tons. Right, I already said that I'll come back to the disintegration of these heavy atoms, and with special reference to uranium. Uranium-235, one of the isotopes, is amenable to splitting when it's been bombarded with a neutron. And in that case, it releases energy, but also other neutrons that then in turn hit other uranium-235 atoms. And again, they split. So we actually create a chain reaction. And when this happens over and over again, obviously a lot of energy is released, and that energy is also creating heat, and the heat can be used to heat up water and make steam, which can then turn turbines, and that's basically, in a nutshell, the way a nuclear power plant operates. Yeah, here again, I've got some examples and also some pictures of what it looks like, and what the importance here is that I want to show you that this chain reaction is happening inside the nuclear reactor, but you also have so-called control rods that you can insert, and that can then actually slow down the chain reaction or even stop it. So that's the way how these nuclear power plants operate. Electricity was actually first generated by a nuclear reactor in 1951, when it lit up 4 light bulbs in the United States. That was obviously experimental. 1 ton of uranium generates 44 million kilowatt hours of electricity. And if we were to do this with fossil fuels, we would need 20,000 tons of coal or 8.5 million cubic meters of gas. Unfortunately, we have this thing up there. We have currently about 440 nuclear reactors operating in 32 countries. And some countries produce up to 75% of their electricity from nuclear energy. Does anybody by any chance knows which country produces 75%? It's France, yes, exactly. But then, of course, the largest producer of nuclear energy is the United States. In addition, we have 50 countries that operate 220 research reactors. The CO2 emissions for nuclear generation range between 9 and 21 tons per gigawatt hour. In comparison, for fossil fuels, this figure is between 385 and 1,343 tons. And for renewables, which is also very important to compare that, it's between 9 and 279 tons. The aim is that 80% of all electricity must be low carbon by 2015. And we all know why that is. That is because we want to meet the 2 degrees Celsius target, or the Paris target as it is often referred to. And nuclear is currently the world's 2nd largest source of low carbon power after hydropower. And it produces, combined with the renewables, about 28% of all low carbon power. How does the future look like? At present, 56 reactors are under construction, which is equivalent to approximately another 15% of the existing capacity. And we have another 100 on order, and more than 300 are proposed. And I shall a little bit later in my presentation come back to why that is. Another interesting fact is also, and I talked to you about those control rods that can actually push the output up and down in a nuclear power plant. So during the pandemic, when we had these enormous fluctuations in the demand for electricity, it was actually only nuclear power that had the flexibility to react to these changes in demand. As you can imagine, if you have solar or wind, when the sun shines, the electricity is generated. You can't stop it. And the same with the wind. Okay. 7 countries dominating the uranium production in the world. I already mentioned that Namibia is number 3. By far, number 1 is Kazakhstan, followed by Canada. Then after Namibia, we have Australia, Uzbekistan, Russia, and Niger. There's a remaining 3.7%, and they are in small quantities produced by China, Ukraine, India, South Africa, Iran, Pakistan, the USA, and Brazil. Interestingly, the world production in 22 was just under 50,000 tons of uranium, but represented only 74% of the total demand. Another very interesting fact is who are the main consumers? Comes as no surprise that it's the USA and France leading, followed by China, Russia, Korea, Ukraine, India, Japan, Canada, the UK, Belgium, Finland, Spain, and Sweden. Now, if you look at that list of countries and you look at the diagram above, you will see that there is quite a disconnect. We have a situation where uranium is produced in countries that don't use it, and it is used by countries that don't produce it. Just a quick look, and unfortunately, this is so, that bulb is very, very strong. This is just about to show you where the reserves of uranium in the world are located. By far the leading country, Australia, followed by Canada, Kazakhstan, and then of course we have also other countries like Russia, same color like Namibia and South Africa, and Brazil that are playing a role. And of course this here is Niger. Oh, sorry. Good. Right, let's come rather to the home front. Namibia has significant uranium mines which produced 14.7% of the world uranium mine output in 23. We also have a long history of uranium production because the first commercial uranium mine, the Rössing uranium mine, began operating in 1976. Excuse me. And at present, we have Rössing, Husab, and Lange Heinrich mines in operation. But the current uranium prices, and I will also come back to that a little bit later, they support the development of advanced exploration projects that we have. And again, I want to underline, as Namibia's uranium is exported and not utilized at home, the country is a net exporter of energy. And here, just for comparison, you have a table of our uranium production since 2008. And you can actually see that there is, with the exception of this part here, there is a steady increase. And Lange Heinrich has come back on stream. So this figure is set to rise. Let's have a look at the situation here in at central western Namibia, where our uranium province is. This is a mineral license map from the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Now, not all the patches that you see here are uranium exploration licenses, but what we have, I have labeled. We already have the 3 producing mines. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Wonderful. Just allow me a sip. I'm depriving you of your coffee, but I'm drinking. Wonderful. I'm still recovering from a bit of a cold, so that's anyway. We have Reusing, Swakop Uranium, and Lange Heinrich mines. And then all the others that are left, Orano has also been a mine. I'll get back to that a bit later, but it's on care and maintenance. And all the others are exploration projects. So it is actually pretty active. Let's start off with the Reusing mine. And I'm speaking here in front of the chairman of the board, so I hope that's okay. I already said it has been for a very, very long time. It is actually the largest and longest operating uranium open cast mine in the world. It has just recently received approval from the board to extend its life of mine to 2036. And the Ministry of Mines and Energy followed suit and also renewed the mining license, or not renewed, but extended the mining license to that year. So we have, Reusing has been with us for a long time, and there's also still a long time to come. Obviously, by extending the life of mine, it goes along with new investment. And that investment, in that case, will cover aspects such as a pit and tailing storage facility extension, plant refurbishment, obviously the plant. Is it fine? Oh, okay. Obviously, the plant is also 48 years old, so it needs some refurbishment and also infrastructure upgrades. The production of last year amounted to almost 3,000 tons of uranium oxide. Okay, the new kid on the block is not so new anymore, but much younger than Reusing is Swakop Uranium's Husab mine, which is a very big mine and actually has an annual mining capacity of more than 100 million tons of ore. The process has a capacity of 50 million tons of ore per year, and the nameplate production is actually 6,000 tons of uranium oxide. In 23, Husab produced 5,300 tons. So as you can see, as it's ramping up, and we have almost reached the 6,000. So it's going to be interesting what the 24 production will be. But 23 was already a substantial increase over the 22 production. Also noteworthy, they have some ore which is lower grade, which they are not putting through the plant, which they have stockpiled so far. And last year they commenced with a 290 million pilot heap leach project to explore the economic viability of or feasibility of processing the lower grade ore with heap leach methods. And the final results are expected next year. Then we have Lange Heinrich mine, which you can see in this photograph here. It produced in the past from 2007 to 2018, and the historic production was some 20,000 tons of uranium oxide. But it was placed on care and maintenance in 2018 because the uranium prices were really very, very low at that stage. And then with the prices increasing and good prospects for the future, there was a final investment decision taken in 22 to restart the mine. The whole process took more than a year, and it cost over 2 billion Namibian dollars. The restart activities focused on general repairs and refurbishments. You can imagine if you have a mine on care and maintenance for 5 years, yes, things are being looked after, but to get it going again, it requires repairs and refurbishments and also some upgrades. Do you also hear this strange noise, or do only I hear it? Anyway, so. Okay. Do you hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, so it's but it's not only refurbishments, but also some upgrades to increase the operational availability as well as the throughput capacity of the plant. So a lot of money and time was spent in getting this mine going again. And indeed, the first production took place in March of this year. I've also obviously looked at their life of mine and the mining plan. And the restart plan has confirmed a 17-year project life with peak production of up to 2,700 tons of uranium oxide per annum for at least 7 years of mining. Usually as we go along in the mining process, these figures are always growing. But you can imagine if you add those 2,700 tons to the 8,200 tons that we produced last year, then we're already breaking the 10,000 ton mark. This is just to give you an overview. That's the Langer-Heinrich plant. And you can see the yellow labels is where they upgraded the process. And the green labels are where they basically put new equipment in. And that will explain to you why this restart was very costly. Then we have the Trekkopi mine. That mine has sadly been on care and maintenance for a very long time, since 2013. But with the market dynamics that we currently see in the uranium market, even for that mine, it was recently announced that the company is doing a pre-feasibility study to look at the potential reopening. It's a very low-grade mine and the resource is not very big, but what it has going for it is simply that 80% of the investment has already been made. That was before 2013. And we have this plant sitting in the middle of the desert. So to get it restarted, you would not need a major investment, but just the 20%, and of course, again, refurbishment and repairs. But it is clearly, it counts in their favor that big investment was already made before 2013. And also they have used the period since 2013 to improve on their recovery process. Then, of course, we have those two projects that I mentioned earlier that have been very advanced exploration projects and that have been sitting there waiting for the price to improve. We have the Itango project of a company called Bannerman. They released their DFS in 22, which gave a strong technical and economic viability of a conventional open pit and heap leach processing operation with a throughput of 8 million tons per annum and at a capital cost of $317 million US. They received their mining license in December of last year, just before Christmas, and immediately started with accessory works, and they will take their final investment decision in the second half of this year. The world-class deposit is expected to deliver some 1,500 tons uranium oxide per annum over an initial 15-year operating life of mine, and they have upside potential in either life of mine extension or upscaling the project. Then we also have the Tumas project of a company called Reptile. They also completed their DFS last year and were also granted a mining license just before Christmas. So the Ministry of Mines and Energy was clearly in a Christmas mood. They plan a similar production, 1,600 tons uranium oxide per year, but they have a different mineralization compared to Bannerman's project, and they will also recover vanadium as a byproduct. They currently have 22 years of mine life based on the current resource, but they are still drilling in order to increase the life of mine. And like Bannerman, they will also take the investment decision pretty soon in the second half this year. We also have some other projects, and notably a project that has had a mining license for a long time, but was also dormant for a long time. That's Valencia, which incidentally is very close to high iron. I mean, in terms of the land. It has a mining license that's valid until 2033, and has also applied for another mining license for a project that's immediately next door. They're currently busy with the updating of their old definitive feasibility study. And you can see here they are planning a first box cut to take a huge ore sample, and this is just the drilling equipment being offloaded. Then we have Elevate Uranium. They operate in the vicinity of the Tumas project. They have four uranium discoveries in the past 4 years, so they are busy with what we call grassroots exploration, but they're finding things, and their main project is the Copies project, which alone has 22,000 tons of uranium oxide at present, but they, as I said, they're still drilling. But Copies is a very shallow deposit, and 95% of the resource occur within 15 meters of the surface, so it's very easy to mine. In addition, this company has, because most of their projects are very low grade, and we have other low grade projects in the country, such as Track Copy, so they have developed a process, they call it upgrade, written like this. And they hold a patent for that in Australia as well as in the US. And it is a beneficiation project, or an upgrade process that takes a lot of the waste out of the ore before it goes into the actual plant. And that, of course, then makes the process in the plant cheaper. So they are still very active in their various licenses, hoping to even discover more. And last not least, we have Zonge, which is a small Chinese company with the same mother company than Rössing. They have a mining license that's valid until 2031, but they are still busy with the evaluation of the resource. In other words, they're still doing some exploration work. And I think they are benefiting from the fact that their mother company now also owns Rössing, because they're financing joint exploration projects. If I wouldn't talk about it, I'm sure you would ask me afterwards. This is now the Headspring project that is heavily discussed in the media and elsewhere in ministries and also in the public. That's obviously not within our uranium province, but it's in the Omaheke down south. It's a completely different mineralization. It cannot be compared to the Rössings and the Langer Heinrichs. And because it's such a different mineralization, it is amenable for what we call in situ leaching. The company has done a lot of drilling to identify their ore body. And they have a mineral resource estimate, which they have reported to the Ministry of Mines and Energy. But then, of course, we all know that because of the fact that the ore body is also in the same area as one of our major aquifers, that the Ministry of Agriculture has actually stopped the process. And at present, we are awaiting a number of experts. I think UNESCO has sent an expert team. We're still waiting for an expert team from the International Atomic Energy Agency to have a look and to advise our ministries as how to proceed, because it is a bit of a difficult situation. The Ministry of Mines and Energy has given the license. The Ministry of Environment and Tourism has given environmental clearance, but the Ministry of Agriculture is opposed. So hopefully this will be resolved one way or the other, and hopefully in the right way. But I just thought I give you a few facts about in situ leaching, because many people also think, yeah, Namibia has been used as a guinea pig, and that is actually not the case. In 22, 56% of world uranium mined was actually from in situ leaching. So it is the dominant method of producing uranium. Most uranium mining in the USA, Kazakhstan, and Uzbekistan is done by in situ leaching or in situ recovery. It's also done in Australia, China, and Russia. And interestingly, it is these days seen as the most environmentally acceptable and cost-effective method of mining, as it leaves no open pits, no waste dams. Once it is finished, you remove the boreholes and you don't see anything. But of course, that is if it is not coinciding with an important aquifer and there is no chance of contamination. But let's see how the powers to be will decide. And now a bit to the economics. It's very unfortunate that all my headings are not visible, but no matter what. The economics. I have the production figures, that's 2023 figures here. And the interesting thing that I'm trying to explain here is I've got the potential production in brackets. That is if Trekopy opens again, once Panama is developed, if Valencia opens again. So while we produced 8,200 tons of uranium oxide in 23, we have the potential to get to that figure. And that would actually put us in the same size category as Kazakhstan. Then we have employment here, royalties and taxes, perhaps figures that are not that significant. But, and this is why this column is also in a different color, it is usually red. This is local procurement. So in 2023, we almost had, and these are billion, well, these are million. Oh, sorry, it's also million, but if you look at the size, 7.7 billion in local procurement. I think that is really a very significant number if you think of the economic impact that uranium mining and exploration has in Namibia. Another interesting calculation I have given here is this is the employment figure, the current employment. I think it is generally accepted that one person with a salary supports 5 others in the family. So if you take it by 6, no, let me actually go further. And then on top of it all, we also know that one job generated in the mining industry generates 7 jobs in the supplier industry. So we have this, uranium miners and their families. And then here we have supplier industry and their families. And if you multiply and add up, you end up with this figure, 350,000. So the monies generated in the uranium industry actually touched the lives of 350,000 Namibians. And I think that is a significant figure. I would not do justice to the theme if I wouldn't talk a little bit about the strategic environmental assessment that was done. You have seen in that license map, and you also know, obviously, that our uranium projects are all concentrated in a fairly small area in central western Namibia. So way back in 2006, 2007, when the uranium price was also very high, no, I shouldn't say also, was very high, and the Ministry of Mines and Energy was inundated with license applications and people came in. The ministry could at some stage not any longer distinguish between the fly-by-nights and those people who were serious. So that's why a moratorium was put in place for 10 years. No uranium exploration licenses were issued. But at that stage, the existing industry said, because we are so close to each other, we cannot use the traditional environmental impact assessment approach, looking at a project by project basis. We have to look at the cumulative impacts. And that is when the industry suggested that a strategic environmental assessment is done. Obviously, strategic environmental assessments are usually done by governments and not by industry. It is in any case not a good idea to assess yourself. So government was approached, and the Geological Survey actually took up the challenge. Very lucky, because at the time, there's still a very close partnership with the German Geological Survey, and they were actually prepared to finance this. So we had the money, we had the will, and we started with a strategic environmental assessment of the Namibian uranium province, which was finalized in 2010. And it was done in very close cooperation between government and industry. It was actually a very interesting and worthwhile exercise. What we did, and I'm now saying we because at the time I was at the Geological Survey, we identified 12 so-called environmental quality objectives. They dealt with socio-economic development, employment, infrastructure, water, air quality and radiation, health, effect on tourism, ecological integrity, education, governance, heritage, archaeology and future, and last not least, mine closure and future land use. So it was a very, very comprehensive exercise. Expert studies were done on all of these 12 issues, and the resulting assessment is a thick book. If you're interested, you can download it from our webpage, which I'll give you at the end of my presentation. And yeah, the interesting thing is out of it, now I'm technically challenged. Here we are. Out of it, I mean, when it was finished, we did not put it on the shelf to gather dust, but we developed a strategic environmental management plan from it. And that SEMP, as we call it in short, has been implemented since 2011. We have 122 different indicators for those various environmental quality objectives, and they are regularly assessed according to these categories here. The indicator cannot be met, it can be met. If it's somewhere in between, it's in progress. And sometimes it's actually even better than expected, and then it's exceeded. And the results of this assessment, they are published in so-called SEMP reports. And obviously not only what I'll show you here, not just a tick somewhere, but also a detailed explanation, a narrative as to why it was assessed as it was assessed, and if necessary, also photographs, maps, tables with data. So it's a comprehensive report that actually shows the environmental performance of the industry. Right, now let's talk a little bit about the uranium price and why we are at the moment seeing that new projects are being developed. Mines that have been on care and maintenance are coming back on stream. It has obviously all to do with the uranium price. And this is here a graph over the last 5 years. And you can see this is when mines were put on care and maintenance. And actually, if I would go further here, it was even lower. But over the time, it has slowly come up. We had in January a big peak here, and as we speak, we are actually around about $90 US. So yeah, you can see this peak was $106 US in January. If you look at the so-called Fukushima low, that was the low price after the Fukushima accident in 2016. The accident was earlier, but obviously it took some time for the market to react. So the absolute low was in October 2016, $18. And if you compare that with this one, that's an price increase of almost 400%. Now, why is this? We have a number of reasons for that. First of all, very interesting, we have in 2021, somebody in Canada was very clever and launched the so-called Sprott Physical Uranium Trust. It's the world's largest fund investigating in physical uranium. So they're taking uranium off the market and keeping it in their trust to sell it at a later stage. So when they were formed, there was still a little bit of stockpiles around the world, but they basically took it up and removed that from the market. Then we have the world's largest uranium producer, Kazakhstan. They had already produced less than budgeted due to the low price, but then this went further down because they have supply chain issues that are still related to the pandemic. So in other words, they produce less than was expected. Then we had two major producers, Ranger in Australia and Cominac in Niger. They ceased operations in 2021. The one because it ran out of ore, the other one combined political and also company decisions. So again, we had, I gave you 22 figures at the beginning of my talk, but in 23, we produced 56,000 tons worldwide, but it was only 72% of the total demand of 77,500. So what happens in these situations? The price goes up, very simple. But we're also seeing a turning point when it comes to the reluctance following the Fukushima accident to use nuclear power. And that is driven by the need to produce low carbon energy and move away from fossil fuels. It actually started in 2021 when the G7 leaders committed to an overwhelmingly decarbonized power system by 2050, and they pledged to accelerate those electricity generators that do it in a low carbon way, and agreed that this includes nuclear. And then during COP27 in Egypt, that was 2 years ago, the benefits of nuclear energy were highlighted, actually for the first time. There was even a seminar on uranium held. And that was really remarkable because in previous years, I think if you went to a COP conference and you would talk about nuclear, they would have probably shown you the door. So this was even increasing in COP28 in Dubai last year, which was really a major milestone for the nuclear industry because the declaration to triple nuclear energy by 2015 was signed by heads of states and ministers from 24 companies. And alongside more than 120 companies active in over 140 nations worldwide, they signed the so-called Net Zero Nuclear Industry Pledge, and that actually echoes the goal set by the ministerial declaration. So, as I already said, it was also the first time that nuclear energy has been formally specified as a solution to climate change in a COP agreement. So you can imagine if this is really going to happen, if we want to triple electricity output from nuclear by 2050, then this would need a lot more uranium production. And that is another reason why the price increases. We have around the world all kinds of issues that also drive the uranium price. Like China, for example, has a plan to build over 30 new reactors in the next 15 years. I mean, that's 2 per year. They have singled out nuclear power as the only energy source with specific targets in their next 5-year plan. Then we have the US Congress that passed the Civilian Nuclear Credit Program that also is actually helping to extend the life of power plants in the US and also assisting new startups of dormant uranium mines. Then the new European Parliament voted in 21 to include nuclear in the EU taxonomy. So that means that finance will again be available, which it was not in the past. France is still very bullish about nuclear and also small modular reactor technology. And the UK is also, they're building a new power plant at Hinkley Point C here. And their responsible minister has actually said that his country or his government is on a mission for fission. Then in 22, the US went one step further and they declared support to existing nuclear infrastructure and as well as new build. The Japanese economy minister pledged to get all those power plants that are still not connected to the grid back onto the grid. Here in California, California was outspoken about getting out of nuclear. They have this one power plant at Diablo Canyon. They made a 180-degree turnaround, and this power plant has now an extended life. Saudi Arabia is building new. We see Sweden changing their energy policy to again include nuclear together with their renewables in their policies. And Belgium changed their mind. And of course, India has always been on the same path as China. Then very recently, the French Senate took a decision in January 23 last year to accelerate new build and also really budget for development of small modular reactors. And this here is an animation. This is now a completely different concept compared to the traditional big nuclear power plants that we know. But I think it could perhaps be a game changer for Africa because these things are small, as you can see, can be transported on a heavy lorry and can be put to projects in remote areas. But we shall see what develops in that field. But then we also have support from the Dutch government. South Africa wants to go ahead. And then, last not least, we have the geopolitical situation. Excuse me. During last year, some uranium producing jurisdictions that were once considered safe are no longer considered safe. And unfortunately, I must mention Niger here. They have become volatile and unpredictable. And we also have the situation where investors and purchasers look more and more to the country of origin. They want to make sure if they buy uranium that it's responsibly mined, that there's no child labor, no environmental degradation. And then, very important, we have the recent US ban on importing uranium from Russia. Now, while Russia is not a major producer, but there are two issues. The one is that they have 50% of the enrichment capacity. So uranium that was mined elsewhere would go through their enrichment plants. And then, of course, it's no longer good to be purchased by the US. And then, of course, Kazakhstan also has exported its uranium through Russia. And they now have to look for alternative routes so that their uranium doesn't have this Russian mark on it. So the geopolitical situation, together with the growing acceptance of nuclear power, has led to a situation where it is really predicted that we need more and more uranium. And this is obviously what drives the price. This is just a slide showing you how many new nuclear power plants were constructed in the last 10 years. And you can see here, obviously, China is absolutely in the lead. But there's also other places in the world that gives us then this total figure here. Yeah, this is unfortunately, there's supposed to be a map behind it. This is just showing where nuclear power plants are in operation, the green ones, where you have closed ones. And well, this is the US. This is Europe, China, India, and South Africa. But this is Egypt. So my apologies, on my screen, my presentation looked perfect. Yeah, maybe. So in conclusion, we are currently seeing a turn when it comes to the reluctance to use nuclear power, driven by the need for low carbon energy and the move away from fossil fuels. And this clearly supports the Namibian uranium sector, as we can see with the reopening of Langer Heinrich and the new projects. With nuclear's now established place in the clean energy mix as an integral part of the transition to net zero, increased market activities can be expected. And Namibia, with the existing mines and the advanced exploration projects, can really is really well positioned to supply the markets with more uranium. So that's more like an advertising slogan, but we say as the third largest uranium producer in the world, Namibia continues to supply abundant, affordable, clean, 24/7 energy to many places on the globe. And this is just how we export it in containers. These are the containers at Walfish Bay Harbor. So I want to close here, and I think I've put enough between you and your coffee, but just with giving you maybe some thought. Marie Curie, well-known nuclear scientist, she said, nothing in life is to be feared. It is only to be understood. So now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. And I thank you.
I must say, I'm impressed that you're still all here. This was a bit of a difficult topic, but thank you for making it so palatable to us. And I think giving it in little pieces, we understood perfectly well. I'm sure I can already see that there's a hand going up, even though there's yawning in between, but still the hand is there. So we need a microphone, please, Andreas.
Yeah, sorry for blocking your coffee, but just two very short questions. What do you think is the reason a country like Germany is not believing in Marie Curie's, why are they adamantly still against it? And the second question about the 7 billion allocated to local procurement. Do you have any breakdown on where that money goes? How much of the 7 billion goes to salaries? How much goes to local services? And how much goes to equipment that Namibians buy from outside and then sell to the industry?
I have that breakdown in my office. Unfortunately, I didn't bring it with me. It does not, salaries is not included here in local procurement. But it is obviously the utilities. A lot of it goes into water, electricity. And there is, of course, also equipment that is purchased from local companies. But I mean, that's the problem that we have in Namibia. We do not manufacture mining equipment, which is unfortunate with all the mining that we're doing, but that's the situation. Sorry, I forgot about your question about Germany. Yeah, my goodness. Okay, man. I anticipated that question. I even have 2 slides on it, but I think let's not get you further away from your coffee. I think, first of all, in Germany, not everybody is against nuclear power. And I think there is quite an opposition, quite a lot of voices that said it was a mistake to do what they have done. I think it is mainly a political issue because we have the Green Party. They actually, their background is that they were the young people who were in the anti-nuclear movement 40 years ago. And I don't think that they are prepared to change their mindset. I think it was also at the time, I was always surprised because the chancellor at the time was a lady with a PhD in physics. But because Fukushima happened and I think it was a populistic decision. And now with the Green Party, together with the Social Democrats in power, they probably, yeah, the ship has left the harbor.
Yeah, we were promised super accidents only many thousand years, and then they happened within 25 years, Chernobyl and Fukushima. But my question is to you. Since the peaceful power generation and the military application of nuclear is so closely related, one can see it which countries are using nuclear for both ways. How much is the market you have explained driven by the military usage of uranium? Or is that mainly plutonium? And there was, in the 90s, after the fall of the Iron Curtain, there was weapons material getting into the power sector. And now maybe with China being threatened and Taiwan and all these new upcoming hotspots, do you think the market is also driven by the military side?
Well, I personally definitely don't think so, because especially one thing I can assure you is that none of the Namibian uranium goes into any military applications, because Namibia is signatory to all the relevant treaties and international instruments, such as the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. And again, I had a slide on that, so I anticipated that question too. I think that the trade in uranium is these days so highly regulated and also monitored by the UN via the International Atomic Energy Agency that those countries who utilize it for weapons, I mean, they have their stock of weapons. And I think, yeah, the geopolitical situation is very difficult at the moment. And one could perhaps expect that Russia or China think that they need to build new nuclear weapons. But I think what primarily drives the price is definitely those things that I've given you. The forecast that we need much more uranium for peaceful use in the future. Yeah. What?
I think Brandon Munro was he gave at a mining conference here a presentation where he says there's huge amounts of uranium enriched in the arsenals of the world. So I don't think they need to stock up.
Enriched to weapons grade. Yeah, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Gabi, and thanks for the really insightful presentation, as usual. I've actually got a question alleged on the fact that we are a net exporter of energy. So my question is, if you were to look ahead 2050 for Namibia, do you think, and I know it's just looking forward, but do you think we could be producing our own energy from nuclear here? If the answer is no, why?
Thank you, Fabian. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you that even way back in 2006, Parliament tasked the Ministry of Mines and Energy to look into that option. And the Ministry of Mines and Energy responded with putting together a nuclear fuel cycle policy. Then, of course, it became a bit quiet. And I know now that more recently, the Minister of Mines and Energy was tasked with looking into this subject again. Obviously, it's not an easy thing because if we think of a conventional nuclear power plant, the size, what they produce, our grid couldn't take. So we would not only need to have this enormous investment in the plant, we also would have to replace our grid, and that becomes financially prohibitive. But I think, and that's my personal opinion, that the small modular reactors, they can become a game changer. So it might well be by 2050, yeah.
Last question. Are we happy? Shall we call it a day? Shall we go for coffee? Last question.
Gabi, thank you. It's an enjoyable presentation. I've got two short questions. The first one is on thorium reactors and the cost of generation 3 and generation 4 nuclear reactors. How do you see the future of thorium?
I know that research is being carried out about it, but I think we still need a lot more research. Of course, it would be quite something to consider because of all the thorium that, especially now, when let's say, for example, we start producing rare earths, we will produce thorium as well, and there is no use for it. But I think we still need a lot more research before we get to that stage.
Thank you. And the last question is climate change. It was on the agenda since 1988 when Hansen spoke to the American Congress, and he basically lied to them. But I would like to ask you a favor. If you've got, there's a danger with consensus science. It's science that you cannot investigate and refute easily. If you've got any unrefuted research article on climate science, consensus climate science, if you could send it to me. I've been looking at this since 1988.
I've got something and I will send it to you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Please give Dr. Gabi Schneider a big hand. And once again, thank you to the Hans Seidel Foundation, who donated publications to us on the environmental policies in Namibia, very important, and some extra energy for you, and it's not nuclear. Thank you very much, Gabi.
I'm very much obliged to get this book, the one in the back, because I'm a co-author.
Then perhaps we should exchange it for another one. Thank you, Gabi. Give it away as a donation. Thank you very much. Everybody, thank you for being here. I'll hand the microphone to our chairman. Denkst du dran, an morgen auch zu
Yeah, just quickly, I just want to thank everybody. You as people attending, you've been very resilient. We've had, the last time I looked on the attendances, we had 74 people here in and out today and 28 people via Zoom. So that's in excess of 100. So I think the investment that Hans Seidel Stiftung made is worthwhile. Thank you for your resilience, for your questions, for your openness, and most importantly, for the fairness that was displayed today. I think there are a few words that we have to take along, and they all start with a C. The only constant in life is change. We need more capacity in Namibia. We need more content, local content in Namibia. Lots of challenges for the future. Let's address them the next topic we definitely still want to address this year, maybe with a mini energy symposium of 2 or 3 speakers, but we have to look at the ease of doing business in Namibia. That is very close to our heart. We have to move Namibia forward. We are one Namibia, one nation. This is what we stand for. Thank you to the team, Benita, Ingrid, Katrin, Andreas, Lawrence, everybody that was involved in making this event possible. Wen habe ich noch vergessen? Helga, Falk. Tomorrow, we've got our AGM of the Forum of German-Speaking Namibians. All members of the forum and all interested parties are welcome to attend. That is at 10:30. Before that, we will have at 9 o'clock an information session on the joint declaration that is currently in a draft format between Germany and Namibia on the genocide that was here in 1904 to 1908. So we're also looking at these topics. Alle sind morgen herzlich willkommen, Mitglieder und Interessenten, und bringt gerne Bekannte mit. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. There's lots of football on the TV tonight, European qualifiers. So relax. This is what I'm going to do. Vielen, vielen Dank. Dankeschön.